So there are 5 things that I recommend you absolutely do before an audition. You've practiced for the big day. Your pieces are perfect. It's only 2 days to go till the big audition or concert, and you open up your case and your instrument has a problem.
Oh no.
That would be the most devastating thing to experience, and believe it or not, it's actually something that happens quite often. Quite often I'll get like emergency calls saying, "Oh, I've got an audition next week and my fingerboard's fallen off," or "My instrument's got an open join," or "The bridge isn't perfect," or "The instrument has a buzz," or "The bow needs a rehair." Why leave it till the last minute? Wouldn't it make sense to get the instrument checked over earlier? Your instrument is like a finely tuned race car. You know what it's like, they do like these little tweaks and they get a car just perfect, and because they get the car and they have this whole team of mechanics around them, because the car's working perfect, they can win the race on the day. And your instrument's a bit the same, just that, your team is the luthier and your teacher and your support. You go to the luthier beforehand, you go to the violin maker, and you make sure that your instrument's working really well. So this is what I would recommend to do before an audition. So there are 5 things that I recommend you absolutely do before an audition. And these things should be done between 1 and 2 months before, except for maybe changing strings. You might want to change strings about 2 weeks before, but a month is okay as well. So the first thing I would do is I would go to a luthier. So about between 1 and 2 months before your audition, book in with your trained violin maker and get your instrument fully checked over. Just make sure everything's fine so you don't have those kinds of emergencies, because if you have an emergency before your audition or concert, some people, it can be absolutely devastating. I mean, some people work better under stress, but most people don't. I had situations when I was up in Townsville for the Chamber Music Festival where a well-known international violinist was up, and a lot of his joints had come undone, and like on his old Italian violin. And so I was literally up in the middle of the night gluing these joints for the concert that he was going to have the next day. So I picked up the instrument from the concert at about 11 p.m. Did the first bit of gluing around that time, woke myself up again at about 4 a.m. to do some more gluing, and then I was able to get the instrument back to the player by I think about 10 or 11 a.m. the next day. But that's far from ideal. Like if that player had actually had a service done before coming over to Australia, he probably wouldn't have had those problems. Other times I've re-glued fingerboards that have fallen off just before a concert. I mean, these kinds of things do happen, and sometimes instruments open just before a concert. But like, if this is a really big event for you, make sure you get everything checked out properly. So there are 5 things that I recommend for you to do, and the first one is to get your instrument checked over. Now the second one is to actually have your instrument serviced if it hasn't been. So you make sure that everything's working fine, like that the fingerboard's been planed nicely, that the pegs work well, and that the bridge and soundpost and everything works well. And the third thing that I would recommend is that you have your bridge and soundpost checked and have the actual sound setup of the instrument checked. Make sure that the instrument sounds its best for the concert or the audition. Now, the fourth thing that I would recommend you do, if it hasn't been done recently, is change your strings. And don't change your strings in like 1 or 2 weeks before the concert, maybe 1 week before the concert, but don't change your strings too close to the concert because they're still settling in. So the closest I would change the string is 1 week before the concert, but maybe do that like about a month before, or you could also have it done with the service from the Violinmaker. And that way you're playing on new strings, and quite often new strings will make the instrument sound a lot better, and often it gives the instrument that little bit of extra brilliance that you don't normally get. And the final thing that I'd get done is I'd get the bow checked, and if it needs it, get your bow rehaired before the concert. And again, get it done about a month or so beforehand, unless you're soloist, in which case you can get it done quite close to the concert because you'll probably have it worn out within a month anyway. But yeah, so make sure that your bow is fairly freshly rehaired so that the bow hairs grip the strings properly. So each hair on a bow has these tiny bristles. So if you look under a microscope, you'll actually see microscopic little bristles, and those bristles basically pluck the string over and over, and the rosin just facilitates that. Now, if the hair is worn, those bristles will have worn off, and then it's the rosin that's making the sound, and that actually either makes too little of a sound, or it can make a slight hissing noise as you're playing. So if you have those things done, your instrument will work really well for the concert. But there's one last thing that can be nice, especially for a concert, and that's to make sure that your instrument is professionally cleaned and polished. Because when your instrument is nicely clean and polished, it just feels better to you, and it looks better, and it makes you feel better. But also in a concert, it actually makes you look better. Having a nicely polished instrument can really look spectacular when you're playing in a concert. And and it shows the audience that you really care about your instrument. It's not important for the sound, but I think it's best to have as much working perfectly as you can. Remember to check that you have your mute, your rosin, your cleaning cloth, and your music. So now that you have all those things done perfectly, you can go to your concert, audition, or exam confidently and really play your heart out and really focus on the music and not worry so much about how the instrument's going to perform for you. Obviously, one thing you have to do beforehand is practice and know the pieces extremely well. Don't just know the pieces well, you need to know them extremely well, because only when you know a piece extremely well will you be able to really put the emotion into the piece and really make it sound good and confident. Anyway, all the best for your audition, concert, or exam, or just your first lesson with your teacher. Make sure you like the video and click on the subscribe button and the little bell. That way you know every time I publish a new video. See ya!